top of a mountain and meditate and pray and read spiritual books from sunrise to sunset. And Gary did something similar on the seashore every day. And after sunset, we'd meet back at the cave and we'd share our hearts. What was our realizations? What are we thinking? It was the most beautiful relationship of soul brothers sharing our spiritual experiences. And at that time, Gary and I, we were best friends for many years. But the way we were traveling together, going from place to place, meeting all different people, we became so close because we shared such a common goal and we were always unconditionally there for each other without judgment. Because in many ways we were very different, but we had such a connection of non-judgmental concern for each other. So when we would share our hearts in that cave, it was something very deep, our conversations. But one day on the top of that mountain, that spark of spiritual aspiration that was in my heart, it had become a burning, all-consuming fire. And there was just nothing else I wanted except to find a path to enlightenment, to connect to God. I came to the conclusion on that mountain, actually even before I came to that mountain, but it was burning hot, that unless I find a spiritual meaning and connection in my life, then nothing else is really very important. And I was crying that day and praying for direction. And the sun began to set. Most beautiful sunset I had ever seen. There was lilac and pink and orange colors painting the sky, painting the clouds, dancing on the waves of the Mediterranean Sea. I was in awe. And at that moment, I heard a voice. It was a silent voice, but it was louder than anything I ever heard in my life. It spoke 3 words. Those 3 words changed my life forever. To go to India. I never met an Indian in my life. Never had Indian food. Didn't even have a map. And at that time we had no money. But I was determined to go. And I was hoping Gary would go with me. But I didn't. I had my doubts. I went down to the cave. Gary was sitting in meditation with a little candle. By this time it was dark out. I said, Gary, something amazing happened to me. Gary said, something amazing happened to me. I said, what? He said, at sunset I heard a voice. I said, really? What did he say? He said, you won't believe me. I said, I might. Just tell me. I sat really close. He said, I heard the words, go to Israel. I said, what? Where? He said, I told you you wouldn't believe me. I said, no, I believe you, but where? Where? I didn't hear you. He said, where? He said, Israel. He told me to go to India. India? Gary yelped. There was complete silence for about 20 minutes as we both looked out in the stars over the Mediterranean Sea. And I remember just whispering He was really worried about me. Hitchhiking through the Middle East and the deserts is not like hitchhiking through Europe. It's very dangerous. Let's go to Israel together and work on a kibbutz, and then we'll make some money and we'll take a bus and I'll go to India with you. But I told Gary, I believe this is a calling of God. And I have to respond. I'm leaving in the morning. And I remember a tear came from Gary's eye and streamed down his long brown beard. And he told me he would pray for me. And he said, yes, you must follow your heart. You can tell what happened after that.
Well, I tried to convince him not to. I was concerned because, like you said, we had no money. And between Europe and India is the whole Middle East. I just couldn't imagine how he was going to get there. You know, I don't even know if he had $10 in his pocket. Perhaps not, you know. To go
Let's just move this a little up.
to go through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, over the Khyber Pass into India. We'd heard stories about how dangerous it could be for a young Jewish American guy to be traveling through the Middle East, you know. But he was determined. I tried to talk him out of it, but he had already made up his mind. He was going no matter what. He knew if he kept going east, he might, you know, with God's will, he'll get there. And I realized at some point there was no, there was no convincing him to come with me to Israel. So at that point, I gave him my love and blessings. And, you know, I worried about him for until I met him again, which is another story. But this was before the days of cell phones and computers and internet connections. And you could lose somebody back then. You know, now it's pretty hard to lose somebody unless you want to. And, you know, so sure enough, at sunrise the next day, we climbed down out of our little cave, and we went to this tiny little, you can call it a bus stop, you know, where the peasants get on the bus, and it takes you to the port. And I couldn't believe that he was leaving, you know, because we'd been together since we were 10 years old, you know. We'd been together through everything, trials and tribulations. This was going to be the first time in my adult life that Radhanath and I were actually, you know, parting paths in the middle of, you know, in this Greek island in Crete, and I didn't know when I'd ever see him again. I was really, really kind of very freaked out, very scared, very concerned. But, you know, I only hope that since God spoke to him, he would watch over him. And I remember he was about to leave, and he wanted to give me something, but we had no possessions. The only thing he had of value was this vest that he used to wear. He started wearing this vest as long as I'd known him, just about. He wore that vest every day. It might not seem like much to you, but when you only own like one shirt and one pair of pants and one pair of shoes and one vest, every piece of clothing counts, you know. And he took off his vest, you know, and he never took that vest off for anybody. He took the vest off and gave it to me, you know. That meant a lot to me. And got on that bus and left. I was just in the middle of the road crying like a baby, and man, it was a long time ago, but it seems like just yesterday talking about it. And that was the last I saw of him for a long time. I did go to Israel. They have a law that if you're of Jewish ancestry and you're not a criminal, they have to let you in, even if you're broke. And they have to find you a place to live, and they have to find you a job. So, and plus it's the Holy Land. I mean, if you're on a spiritual quest, you know, Israel is the spiritual center for Jews and Muslims and Christians. And so I thought, what a great place to go. I thought that's what God was said to him until he told me to go to India. But that was the last I saw of him for a long, long time. At least that's my recollection of how it all happened.
When I gave him my vest, I had vested interest. And that was the most dear thing in my heart I was giving to my best friend. Because it was actually my identity. That vest became like an inseparable part of my identity because I wore it every day for so many years. And I was kind of giving him myself in that form. The journey home talks about my hitchhiking through the Middle East. Sometimes I traveled with a couple of other people, sometimes alone, through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. From the point I came to Istanbul, it took 3 months to reach the border of India. And many life-changing experiences took place in the Middle East. It was like nothing. Every day was severe culture shocks. When you're kind of alone and you don't have anything, you're really exposed to everything good and everything bad and everything else. But it was a growing experience because I was coming to the conclusion that I was not in control. There was so many things so out of control of me that I really had to turn to a higher power than myself. And I believed that that was the power of God. And that was something very, very beautiful. To feel that connection, to me at that time, was of greater value than all the money in the world. Because I was coming to the realization that inner fulfillment and inner meaning was what brought real happiness, not things. Somehow, after 3 months of hitchhiking through the Middle East, I made it to India. I crossed over the border. And I remember I was walking at night, the first night I came into India, through an agricultural field. I was all alone. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have anything. I was just walking through fields. And I felt so at home. Then I came to a little road, and I flagged a car down that was driving by. And he took me to a railway station and said he was going to take me on a train to Delhi. And I was thinking, oh, after 6 months from London to this place, I've been hitchhiking and getting rides in the back of trucks and in the back of camels and in overcrowded ferries. I've never had a seat on a train. This is really going to be such a relaxing experience. And I have a host who's going to bring me on the train with him. Do you want to hear this story?
Yes.
We got to the railway station. My first day in India, my first night in India. And that railway station was crowded with people. There were people cooking all kinds of stuff on these little carts, and they were selling everything. And there were beggars of all sorts, trying to get donations.